Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. I'm so excited about this interview today. I'm with an amazing sister. Alhamd is her online name. She's so cool. You guys are gonna love this story. Introduce yourself for us, Alhamd.
Hi, Assalamu alaikum. Usually, I don't know. Basically, I reverted to Islam 4 years ago, and I'm just new to like TikTok and YouTube and everything. So I was had this cool opportunity to be on this interview, which I'm nervous but excited about to share my story. And yeah, I don't know what to say.
Alhamdulillah. So your story is so unique, and so many people are going to be inspired by this. So I'm super excited. Let's start with the beginning. You were born non-Muslim, obviously. What religion were you born as? What journey did you go in that religion?
So basically, I was born to like a Jewish family, a practicing religious Jewish family. We went through like a bit of changes, but we were always Jewish. So, like for example, at the beginning, for the first like 4 years of my life, we were Hasidic, Jewish, ultra Orthodox. But then after my parents' divorce, my mother took us out of that. But then we were still like modern Orthodox, what we call it, or yeah, conservative. And yeah, I just grew up Jewish. I went to a Jewish school my whole life, elementary school and high school, gardery, all that. So I grew up very Jewish. My mother is Jewish. She calls herself Israeli, but she's from Moroccan, Yemeni background, and my father is Ashkenazi Jewish, which means he's European. And yeah, I just grew up basically Jewish and identifying as Jewish and pretty religious. I always believed in God and I kept kosher. And so it's kind of similar to Islam. So it wasn't a huge change, but in a way, it also was a huge change. So,
Wow. Did you ever experience like Zionism or anything like that?
yeah. So like I said, I went to like a Jewish school my whole life. And at least Jewish schools in Canada, they're like very like Zionist. It's a huge part of like the curriculum. For example, we had this is my last year of high school. It's like people don't believe it when I say it, and I'm like, yeah, I know. We had a class called Israel Advocacy, and basically it was like preparing us for the outside world when we meet non-Jewish people, and to like be able to advocate for Israel. So because after our last year of high school, it works different in my city, but like in grade 11 is our last year of high school, and after yeah, so like they taught us about like basically the history and how to defend Israel. So when we meet like Arabs and non-Jews who are anti-Semitic. So yeah.
Wow. How did you feel when you were in those classes
I
taking
was
this?
Yeah, sorry. I was actually really like like embarrassed a bit to say, but I've been open about it on my like TikTok that like I really was a Zionist, and I was like one of the most probably out of my class. Like I was really passionate about it, and I was like, yeah. And like the teacher was actually known in my city for like being extremely Zionist. Like he almost like he did like a conference or something in a university, and it was like a huge uproar and everything because he's kind of like anti-Arab, he's not very politically correct either in his Zionism. And I was very extremely Zionist. I used to go to all the rallies and I still have yeah. I just have I still have some pictures left of like me with an Israeli flag. And I'm like, so I changed so much. It's crazy like how my mindset changed so much from like looking at the other perspective. But yeah, it was definitely super Zionist.
MashaAllah, honestly, just just like knowing about that, and to see where you are now, it's crazy to think you can go from one extreme to another. But that's the beauty of life, right? And that's the beauty of you must be a very open person in order to be open to new experiences that are opposite to what your beliefs were at the time. And honestly, I can't imagine making such a drastic change. Mashallah, it's so amazing. Do you remember do you remember why you related to that kind of Zionism side? Like, was it to do with were you fed false information? Was it like did you feel sort of exhilarated when you went to these rallies or whatever they are? Like, why were you sort of interested in it, do you think?
Oh, there's like a few reasons, but basically one of the reasons is just because like I was like consider myself Jewish, and I still do consider myself Jewish ethnically. I don't see a problem with that. Um, but I just felt like it's an intrinsic part of Judaism. Like you have to, like, this is our people, this is our like promised land. This is like, look what we have. We were like, this is kind of like the kind of, I would say, propaganda that they feed you. Like, look what happened to us. We were like hated, like we were kicked out of everywhere. They tried to like kill us everywhere we went, and now we're strong, and now we're like, so it felt like nice to be like, oh, we're strong now, we have an army in this. And I was also like taught in a way that like we came to like an empty land, like there was nothing there, and we just came there and like we made it great, right? Without like, just they just like basically like hid the fact that there was actually people there, and the whole Nakba, I never heard of that until after I graduated, until after I met other people, like until way later, that I'm like, wait, they actually kicked out like 6 Palestinian refugees today. I was like, I had no idea. And I was very like strong in my thing, and I used to like argue with people online, like of like being pro-Zionist, be like, no, you guys do terrorism, this, that. And it would just took me like to look at the other perspective. I remember like how it started. Basically, I made a Twitter, like an undercover Twitter, I would say, is when I was first interested in Islam. So I started like posting a bit like Muslim stuff, and I would only follow Muslims, and a lot about Palestine came up. And that's when I started seeing like the situation from the Palestinian perspective. And that was the first time where I learned about the Nakba, and where I saw like, I read stories of like what happened to people's family. I saw videos from the other side, because all I was seeing was videos of like, look at these Palestinians killing Jews. And I was convinced that Palestinians just hated Jews and they just wanted to kill them, because that's all I was shown, right? The one side. So when I was able to see the Palestinian side, like I'd say the Palestinian side, I was able to see the full picture, and like how it works, and like why these things happen. And when you can only understand really the reality of a situation when you see the whole picture. And I was only seeing half of it before. So when I was able to see the full picture, it took me some time to finally let go of like these strong beliefs I had, because they were so strongly ingrained in me. But it took me a lot of time to be able to be like, finally tell myself like, okay, I have to accept the truth. That's pretty much.
So I'm assuming what came first is accepting the truth of the oppression towards the Palestinians, and then you became Muslim after, correct?
It was kind of at the same time. Like I became officially Muslim before I would say I was like 100% pro-Palestine. When I became Muslim, I was like iffy about the situation. I wasn't super pro-Israel Zionist like I was before, but I also wasn't pro-Palestine, because I was like, I wasn't really like sure about the situation. So it came after I converted to Islam, but kind of at the same time too.
MashaAllah. Okay, so taking Israel Palestine aside, what was your convert story? Like, how did you discover Islam? Why did you see Islam as the truth?
So basically, it's like yeah, it's a long story, obviously. Like I'm sure you can imagine, it's a long story. It's not one day to the next. Basically, like I always was super like believe in God, and that was never a question for me. And I don't know if you know how much you know about Judaism, but there's like a lot of practices that we do, a lot of holidays, and a lot of like restrictions, and a lot of this and that. And I consider it today as bid'ah, like innovation. Like it's not from the Torah, it's from rabbis. So a lot of things that we are doing, for example, like things that we can't do on Shabbat and this and that, and like these like super strict like holidays where like you don't find them in the Torah. I started doubting like why we were doing them. And I would ask my mom, like, why are we doing this if it doesn't say in the Torah to do this? God himself never said to do this. And she was like, oh, but this is how it is, blah, blah, blah. And people also started asking me, because I was Jewish, and I was like, I don't know, honestly. So I started like reading into it, and I was like, this doesn't really make sense. So I kind of started distancing myself from like religion, and I stopped like keeping Shabbat like in secret. I would like, because on Shabbat, I don't know if you know, but you can't be on your phone and stuff. Like on Friday nights to Saturday. So I used to like do it under my blanket, and I would be on my phone, because I was like, it doesn't really make sense. And then after I was kind of distancing myself from religion, and I felt like I was kind of lost. I was like I believe in God, but like I don't feel close to God. So I started like reading the book of Psalms. It's the book of Tehillim in Hebrew. I started reading on my way to school. I had a small one with me, and I would read it. And I was like, oh, I felt nice, because I felt like, more spiritual. And I noticed at that point that like, I know this is like a weird like thing to point out, but like I noticed at that point, like how, because it's written by King David to God. So he was saying so many times, like, I prostrate to you, God, I prostrate to you, God, I prostrate in prayer, blah, blah. And it was like a common theme that kept appearing, like prostrating in prayer. And Jews don't prostrate in prayer. So I was like, why is he talking about prostrating to God and then like not prostrating in prayer? Like I Googled it and like all the explanations of rabbis didn't make sense to me. I was like, why? Like God said to pray this way and then now you're changing it. And then after like just like a random light bulb in my head was like, oh, Muslims pray this way. Like the first thing I thought was Muslims. Oh, I know Muslims prostrate, but I was like, whatever. Anyways, I found this other like from there. I found like when I was doing my research of why Jews don't prostrate, I found this other group of Jews called Karaite Jews, and they similarly to Muslims, they like the way they pray. It's like they prostrate. Their synagogue is just like a big carpet, just like Muslims, and they prostrate in prayer. And then I started reading into their ideology, and this is when I realized because that they were different than mainstream Jews, which we call rabbinic Jews, right? So they're saying they like pointed out to me, like that's when I realized they were saying that like, sorry, I'm like all over the place, but they were saying that what Jews do today, what they practice, most of it is from rabbis. That's why they call it rabbinic Judaism. And they're like, no, we reject the Talmud, we reject everything, all the innovations from the Torah, from the like rabbis, we only follow strictly the Torah. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. And that's when I realized, like when I asked my mom, why do we do this if it's not written in the Torah? Why do we do this and that? At that point, it clicked. I was like, okay, so they do that because rabbi said so, and that doesn't make sense. And hearing it from a Jewish person, like if a Muslim told me, oh, it doesn't make sense, why do they listen to rabbis? I would have been like, yeah, but you're a Muslim, of course you're going to say that. So hearing Jews say that, like I believe in the Torah, I believe in Judaism, I just don't believe in what rabbis say, it really hit me. I was like, that makes sense. Why should I follow human beings? Because rabbis are human beings. They're not even prophets, right? They're not even chosen by God. So it's not the equivalent of the Sunnah of Muhammad because he's chosen by God, right? So I was like, okay, that's when I started being like, okay, I don't want to do any of this rabbi stuff. So I was like relating more to the Karaite stuff, the Jews. And I was like, okay, I just want to follow the Torah. And at the same time, I was also on Twitter, right? Like I said, I make my favorite account. So I was like starting to like read more about like Islam, and I was like, it's very compatible with Karaite Judaism. It's compatible with the Torah. It makes sense that like that because, and then I started realizing how like Muslims were saying that they sent the Prophet Muhammad because the Jews were going astray. They were doing bid'ah and they were innovating and they were changing their things. And I was like, that makes so much sense. Like it's true. Like they're listening to their rabbis. Like no wonder God was like, whoa, calm down, and then sent like a new messenger, which was Jesus. And then they said Jesus is God. So God was like, no, XXX, and this is why he sent the prophets. So to me it just, the chronology of it just made so much sense. And it's like, and it took me like I realized this, but it took me so long to actually accept it and be like, okay, yeah, I'm Muslim, because I was like, no, whatever, I'm not going to be like anything. But then I would learn more and more, and I was like, you know what, let me just read the Quran, maybe it's going to help. And then I read the Quran and I was like, it's just so compatible with the Torah. And the whole time I used to be told that like the Quran is just a copy of the Torah. They just stole everything from the Jews. But then I realized it's not stealing, it's just the same author. So of course it's gonna have similarities, right? And this, like, I made a TikTok about this. I'm saying like, and I said like, you wouldn't say like the fourth Harry Potter book is a copy of the first. It's the same author, so it's gonna have similar themes and similar messages, right? So that's what I realized. I was like, it's just a chronology and it makes sense. First came the Torah, and that's when I realized that we all believe in the same God. I used to think Allah was a different God. Like they have Allah, we have God. I realized Allah is just an Arabic term for God. We all believe in the same God. First came the Torah, then came the Injil, and then the Quran was like the final message. And it was like just every single thing that I was learning just like kept confirming, the scientific proofs of the Quran just kept confirming the validity of it. And just so many little things. And when God said this, Muhammad is the seal of the prophets, and then no prophet came afterwards. But God never said that about the Jewish prophets. God never said that about Jesus. So why is it a coincidence that suddenly when he says, God says Muhammad is the seal of the prophets, no other prophet comes and says, convinces people, no other religion comes afterwards that's Abrahamic, of course. So yeah, pretty much.
MashaAllah, what a journey.
Yeah.
MashaAllah. How did your family react then when you became Muslim?
Well, like I didn't tell anyone, like even friends that were Muslim. Like I had one Muslim friend, but I didn't tell her. I didn't tell them until much later, and took me like a year and a half to tell my mom. So I took her to dinner and I was like, I am Muslim. Pretty much. And I only actually told her. I didn't tell any of my siblings, but they know because I think they hear me speaking and like my mom surely told them. But I only ever had a full-on conversation about it with my mom, and she was very not happy. She was upset. She told me that she felt that she failed me in Judaism, and like it's sad for her, and she was mostly sad and disappointed. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But I never had a conversation with anyone else. None of them, but my other family knows, like my grandparents, my cousins, aunts and uncles. No one else knows. So
I mean, has it sort of changed your relationship with her in any way?
I think it no, but yes, because like I mean, she still loves me. She still lets me live in her house. I'm living in her house currently because my
Sure.
husband and I are long distance. Um, but yeah, it's just like I know that she still has some like prejudices against Muslims. So like she still like worries about me that, Daesh and everything, and like those kind of things. And like she thinks I'm an extremist because I'm Muslim, like brainwashed. So I feel that that's what she feels about me because the kind of questions she asks me, it suggests that she believes that, and it's hurtful. But that's it.
Do you wear hijab around her and stuff?
Um, like I wore once she saw me on the street, I was wearing it and she got so angry at me. She's like, I'm gonna talk to you when I'm home. And she said, like, I never want to see you in this, blah, blah, blah. But subhanAllah, like 2 weeks ago was like the first time like I went out with her. She's like, okay, let's go eat. And I was like, okay. I didn't ask say anything. I just put on the hijab. We went out. She didn't say anything. But I know she was like, it was like there was a tension there. She was like looking at me, but she didn't say anything. And I was happy about that. That was the first time and the only time that I went out with her in like a full hijab. But
MashaAllah. What about
yeah,
any of your friends from when you were sort of like Zionist or people from your classes and stuff? Like,
yeah.
do they know? Do any of them know?
I don't know. The reason I like honestly cover my face, I only cover it online, just because I do want to keep that private. And I did have like dreams of like classmates seeing it because I just feel like they're not very nice and like they would be like all gossipy and stuff. So I don't think any of them know. They might recognize me from my eyes, maybe, because some people have recognized me, but they might know, but I really don't know. I had one friend that I kept in contact with, and it was really hard to tell her. I felt really awkward and uncomfortable, but she's like my best friend since I'm 12. So she was accepting, and I do wear the hijab around her. But like, I know her family and everything, and I wouldn't feel comfortable wearing it around them. So I'd
Mm.
never worn it around them. But yeah, I don't know. I really don't know if they know, but I kind of don't want them to know. That's why I like keep my identity kind of private.
Yeah, of course. You don't want to get any trouble or anything.
Yeah.
MashaAllah. If you could sort of like send a message out to anyone who's watching who may know you, what would you say from your past?
Well, I would say that like, I'm still the same person. I feel like I just found my path and I don't know, like maybe you should look into it too, look into Islam too. Like, I don't know what to say. Yeah, pretty much.
MashaAllah. Anyone who likes you for you won't judge you because of your change. The
Exactly.
good
Right.
people will stay and the bad people will go. And that's the best way for it to be.
Yeah, exactly.
MashaAllah. So what about your husband? Like, where's he from?
Oh, my husband, he's Palestinian, so he's born and raised in Jerusalem, and he's lived there his whole life. I never thought I would ever be with a Palestinian, especially like me, like 6 years ago. I would have been like, never, like, what the. And I remember always saying, like, thinking to myself, the worst person I could bring to my mom is not only a Muslim, not only an Arab, but a Palestinian. I was like, that's the worst. And then it happened. I didn't plan on it. I promise. I didn't do it, and
Yeah.
I feel like maybe my mom thinks I did it to spite her, but I swear I didn't. It just happened.
It's funny because so my mum, I don't know why she used to do this. When I was younger, she used to say to me, "You can marry anyone but a Pakistani." That is what she used to say to me. Honestly, I don't know why. I don't know what she had against Pakistanis. Now she's fine. She's chill. But at the time, she had so much against Pakistanis for whatever reason. And I ended up marrying a Pakistani. And I still remember being a kid and her saying to me, "You can marry anyone but a Pakistani." It's so weird that like maybe that went into my brain in a weird way and just like forced me to marry a Pakistani.
That's so funny. Yeah, so it's like similar. Like my mom never told me, never married. Like it was just known, you know.
Yeah, mashallah. That's amazing. Well, it's so amazing that you shared your story. I feel inspired, very inspired actually. So I don't know if you know this, but I get accused a lot of being a Jewish spy. This is like the thing, like Aisha Rosalie, the Jewish spy. So what, have you had any of that yet? Like, have you had people like saying to you, "Oh my God, you're a Jewish spy," or "You're infiltrating like Muslims" or something like that?
Honestly, yeah, but it's very like not common. Like maybe out of like thousands of comments, maybe like three or four were like Mossad spy, Israeli spy, and I was like, I mean, it could be, I could be, but like if I was, I wouldn't say I was a convert. I would just say I was born Muslim. Like, why would I say like if I was a spy? Think about it. Why would
Yeah.
I say I used to be Jewish? Like that doesn't make sense. I would just say I'm born Muslim. I'm
Yeah.
Palestinian. You know.
Yeah, so it's an important message for our Muslim community to, be more compassionate to converts and not see the worst in us, not think we're doing bad,
Yeah.
but try and see the potential goodness. I saw a quote once and it said, if I saw a Muslim with alcohol dripping from his beard, I would assume someone threw alcohol at him. And it's a good
Oh.
it's a good analogy. We should assume the best in our brothers and sisters. We should never assume the worst.
I never heard that, but that's a really, yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Yeah, mashallah. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on. Assalamu
Thank you
alaikum,
so
everyone.
much. Wa alaikum salam. Thank you so much.
الحمد لله